always been keen on the sons of Tappet. We've done well with him. He's broken out quite well. He's a beautiful mover, potentially a really nice two-turn horse going forward. We're really kind of very fond of him.
We bought the Tappert filly out of the Blue Eyes in the Rain filly at the Keeneland sale. What we really liked about her was obviously her physique. We liked the way she moved, and we just fell in love with her from the start, really.
Tappert, standing at Gainesway.
Hi everyone, I'm David Aragona and welcome to the TimeformUS Road to the Derby series presented by Gainesway, as Gainesway is presenting all of our Kentucky Derby prep coverage during this 2022 season. The focus of this video is the Louisiana Derby, a Grade 2 event on Saturday at the fairgrounds, race 12 on their 12 race card. This one's going 1 mile and 3/16 for the 3-year-olds, kind of in a unique distance for the 3-year-olds at this time of year. Most of the final preps for the Kentucky Derby at the 1 1/8. So they'll be going an extra 16th of a mile, a bit more of a test of stamina at the fairgrounds on Saturdays. These 3-year-olds try to earn their points to get into the Kentucky Derby. 100 points on the line to the winner of this race. Let's throw up the field. We have 9 runners signed on for this one. The likely favorite, the prohibitive favorite, is going to be the number 6 Epicenter. He is pegged at 7-5 on the morning line. We'll see how short he does go, as he does look pretty tough to beat in this race. The second choice on the morning line is the number 7 Pioneer of Medina, who did finish behind Epicenter last time when that one won the Risen Star. We'll see who winds up being the second choice in this race. As you can see, the morning line maker has, I believe, 6 horses pegged between 5-1 and 8-1 on the line. I would imagine the number 2 Zozo, who is one of those 8-1 shots, will take quite a bit of support in this race. He's 2 for 2 in his career, coming off an impressive victory for Brad Cox. So I could see him going off as the second choice in this race. We'll see what we get from the number 3, Call Me Midnight, the most recent horse to defeat Epicenter when he did so in the Lecomte back in January. And we've also got some Florida shippers towards the outside, like Galt and Rattle and Roll. Let's take a look at the TimeformUS pace projector before we get into the main contenders. And that favorite, the number 6 Epicenter, shown on the early lead in this race. No big surprise about that. That's the way that Epicenter likes to run. Go to the front end and try to take these fields from gate to wire, leading all the way. He's shown with a distinct early advantage over the number 7 Pioneer of Medina, who did stalk him last time in the Risen Star. Another horse with some early speed is the aforementioned Zozo, who stalked the pace at both of his prior starts. And we'll see how much speed we get from some of the others, like Galt, who did set the pace, albeit a slower pace, in the Holy Bull 2 back, and Kupuna, who's again more of a stalking type. You see that red flag for a fast pace being predicted by the pace projector. We do see that a lot with these 3-year-old prep races, given that there are a lot of horses stretching out in distance. The pace projector does flag some of those horses that having more forward running styles than they might have in their sprint or shorter races. So that's what leads to that fast pace characterization. Though I would say that I wouldn't really analyze this like of pace that's likely to come apart, because Epicenter has that clear early lead depicted, and he's so strong as a front runner. I would not be surprised if he doesn't take that much pressure on the front end, kind of a similar situation to what we saw in the Risen Star. And speaking of the Risen Star, let's take a look at the PPs of Epicenter and check out his last race and his recent starts. He did get a 1:13 TimeformUS speed figure for that victory last time out, when he beat Smile Happy, one of the top Kentucky Derby contenders, by 2 3/4 lengths. And it was a pretty commanding score, as he opened up a big advantage coming to the 8th pole that day and pretty easily held sway under just minimal encouragement through the lane from Joel Rosario. As you can see from that TimeformUS pace, it was a very even pace throughout. 1:13, 1:12 pace figures the entire way. So that's the kind of trip that you want to see your front runners get. Just be able to click off those 12, 24, 8 1/4 miles the entire way. And that's what Epicenter was able to do in the Risen Star last time. Just has to stretch out an extra 16th of a mile to get the 1 3/16 of this Louisiana Derby. I don't anticipate it being a big problem for him. He's a big, strapping son of Not This Time, who looks like the kind that should not have any trouble handling the classic distances. And given the way the pace projector is anticipating this race is going to shake out on the front end, with Epicenter once again enjoying a clear early lead, I view him as a pretty likely winner of this race. And given his upward trajectory, I think he's going to be pretty tough to beat in this Louisiana Derby at what should be a relatively short price. Horse that beat Epicenter 2 back is the number 3, Call Me Midnight. Let's take a look at his past performances. Now, he has not raced since that Lecomte score back in the middle of January. His connections chose not to participate in the Risen Star last month when Epicenter won that race. So Call Me Midnight's coming into this Louisiana Derby off a 2-month layoff. Now, while he did beat Epicenter in that Lecomte, I would say that Epicenter probably ran the better race that day. I liked Call Me Midnight in that spot. Don't get me wrong. If you followed the TimeformUS podcast, both me and my colleague who do that show, Craig Milkowski, thought that Call Me Midnight was a horse you wanted to bet at 28-1 that day. But that might have been the day to have him, because you see those early pace ratings color-coded in red for the first couple of calls. That indicates a fast pace, and Epicenter was the one setting that pace, whereas Call Me Midnight was able to close into it, and he really got a fantastic setup in winning that day, getting up to beat Epicenter by a head. I thought it all went right for him to win, going the mile and the 16th last time. If they don't go quite as quickly up front, going the farther distance this day, I'm a little bit concerned that Call Me Midnight might not get the setup he needs to win this Louisiana Derby. He does have the stamina in his pedigree to suggest that a mile and 3/16 could be within his scope, but given that there's not as much speed signed on, and the fact that Epicenter might have moved forward since that Lecomte, and we're not sure if Call Me Midnight's done the same, I would tend to lead towards Epicenter. Call Me Midnight's listed at 6-1 on the morning line. I would personally need more than that if I was going to support him once again in a race like this. Horse that could attract a lot of support in this race, as I was kind of alluding to when assessing the morning line, is the number 2, Zozos. Let's take a look at his race when he won last time out at Oaklawn Park, winning an allowance race by over 10 lengths. That is him coming into the stretch in those dark blue silks on the outside, taking over from the favorite in this race, who was fading to his inside. And he's going to draw off pretty impressively in this race with some big, powerful strides through the stretch. This was a horse that failed to change leads in his career debut at Fairgrounds, going 6 furlongs, but you can see in this Oaklawn allowance race, he changed leads right on cue at the top of the stretch and strides out beautifully to the wire under minimal encouragement. But despite the fact that Florent Giroux really did not fully set him down through the last eighth of a mile of that race, he finishes up in some pretty robust time. You can see that the pace figure line for that race is rising towards the end, though all of the pace figures, you should note, are color-coded in blue, indicating that it was a slow pace, and he was right on top of that slow pace. But at least one positive thing you can say about him is he did take full advantage of that good trip, because he really sprinted through the wire. That was going a mile and a 16th, also against a much weaker field than what he's going to meet in this Louisiana Derby. But he's a horse that's done nothing wrong in his career now, 2 for 2. He improved from start 1 to start 2. The TimeformUS speed figures might not indicate that so clearly, as he got a 98 for both of those races. But you'll notice that the final time number of 103 for that allowance race last time is much higher than the final time number that he got for his debut when he was engaged in a faster paced race. And furthermore, while the TimeformUS speed figure for that last allowance victory at Oaklawn might not be overwhelming, horses have come back out of that race to run much faster in subsequent starts. Actually, one of the horses that finished off the board that day came back and won an allowance race last week at the Fairgrounds with a much faster speed figure, I think improving by 20 or 30 points. So that definitely bodes well for Zozos potentially improving out of that allowance race last time. I think he does have to take another step forward to unseat a horse like Epicenter, but he definitely has upside. He's moving in the right direction. We'll see what kind of value he offers on the tote board. Another horse that faced off against Epicenter recently is the number 7, Pioneer of Medina. Take a look at his past performances. He's actually coming off a loss to Epicenter last time out in the Risen Star when he faded to 4th after chasing Epicenter in the early going. He had a pretty good trip that day, as I was saying, with regard to Epicenter. The early pace of that race was pretty moderate, even splits throughout, and Pioneer Medina just chased the winner around the track and faded slightly in the late stages to just finish about 3/4 of a length out of second place that day. Losing to horses like Smile Happy and Zandon by less than a length is really nothing to sneeze at, though. Pioneer Medina ran well in that race, clearly the best performance that he's put forth so far in his career, a definite improvement on his allowance victory 2 back at Fairgrounds when he won on the Lecomte undercard. So I like that this horse seems to be moving in the right direction right now for trainer Todd Pletcher. I've watched some of his recent workouts since that Risen Star effort, and I like the way that this horse is training coming into this race, kind of going with that theme of him improving in every career start. I think he's training better for this race than he even did going into the Risen Star last time. He's worked well in company with some horses, not really the top horses in Todd Pletcher's barn, but I like the way that he's finishing his workouts, galloping out. He runs like a horse that's going to have no problem handling the stretch out to a mile and 3:16. So I do think he's among the main dangers to Epicenter, and I'm not convinced that he has to be the second choice on the morning line, or at least when the public puts their money into the pools. I could see him drifting up a little bit off that 5-1 line. So if he goes off at a bigger price in this race, he could be one that offers a little bit of value into the face of Epicenter. Other horse that some might consider a contender in this race is the number 9, Rattle and Roll. And let's go back to the end of his 2-year-old season when he won the Breeders' Futurity at Keeneland to take a look at the stretch run of that race. That is him in the black silks and that red cap coming into the stretch 3 wide to take this race over. And this kind of cemented him as one of the top horses in Ken McPeak's barn heading into this 3-year-old season, a potential player on the Kentucky Derby trail. The horses he's beating here are okay. The 3rd place finisher, Classic Causeway, has come out of this race to win 2 preps on this Kentucky Derby trail, the Sam F. Davis and the Tampa Bay Derby. So that definitely bolsters the form of this Breeders' Futurity. That Rattle and Roll won. Though when he made his 3-year-old debut last time out in the Fountain of Youth, it was a bit of a disappointing effort, finishing 6th in that race. He went off at 9-2 odds, so he definitely attracted some support from the public, but just didn't really run to it as he was beaten over 7 lengths by simplification. As I watched that Fountain of Youth, I would say that he didn't have an ideal trip. He followed some horses to make an inside move down the backstretch, got shuffled back around the far turn as the early leader faded, had to alter course back to the outside. Again, had a spot of traffic in the stretch run. He was never going to win that race, and I don't think he was ever going to finish in the money with a clean trip, but he probably was somewhat compromised by having to alter course multiple times in that Fountain of Youth. I do think this horse has upside, and he's liable to take a step forward off that seasonal debut. While he's posted some very fast workout times this year, I didn't like the way that he was training into the Fountain of Youth. He was decidedly second best to the horses that Ken McPeak put him in company with in the mornings, and he seemed to get really washy in his workouts leading up to that race. His one workout since then, a 58-4 on March 19th at Gulfstream Park, I thought it was a slight improvement. Once again, he worked with Smile Happy and was second best to that foe, but it was definitely a more engaged version of Rattle and Roll in that workout. So I do think he's a candidate to take a step forward, but for me, I would just let price be my guide, and I might want a little bit more than the 6-1 that he is on the morning line, but he definitely does seem like one that could take a step forward in his second start as a 3-year-old. One more horse that I want to discuss before I throw out my picks for this race is the number 5, Kupuna. We can take a look at his past performances. Just another horse that seems to be improving coming into this Louisiana Derby, has only made 4 starts in his career, and this will mark his stakes debut. He last raced on the undercard of the Risen Star when he was second in an allowance race to Cyberknife, a Brad Cox trainee that seems to be very promising. He would have been among the favorites in this race, probably the second choice if Brad Cox had elected to run him in this Louisiana Derby, but that runner's not playing. Kupuna is, so we'll see how he does coming out of that race that did come up pretty fast. He got a 109 TimeformUS speed figure for that performance, which does not put him that far off Epicenter, who got a 113 in winning the Risen Star. We'll just see if that number proves out to be predictive moving forward. He has to validate it because his prior speed figures don't quite measure up to that. He has worked well since that race, so maybe he is just another horse that's moving forward at the right time. He's another horse that's listed at 8-1 in the morning line. We'll see what price he goes off at. He's another horse that I could see drifting up a little bit, but he's one that I would need a bigger price on because I do think that he comes into this race with quite a bit to prove against a solid favorite like Epicenter. So let's throw out my picks for this Louisiana Derby. I put the favorite on top. I've got to say, I'm really not against Epicenter. I was impressed from a visual standpoint by his victory in the Risen Star last time, and given the way that I think this pace is going to play out, I think he's going to have another moderate lead to his own and to his liking on the front end. So I view him as getting a trip that is going to be to his favor in this race. So I put Epicenter on top. I've got the horse that finished behind him last time, the number 7 Pioneer of Medina in second. I do anticipate that he's going to drift up from that 5-1 morning line, and I think he's a horse that's doing well right now and will relish the stretch out distance. So I view him as the most likely upsetter. I've got the number 2 Zozo's in third. I'm not sure we're going to get a lot of value on that horse, but he is one that has shown some talent in his races for Brad Cox. But I think Epicenter is going to be pretty tough to beat in this Louisiana Derby on Saturday at Fairgrounds. Thanks to Gainesway for presenting this video, and good luck to you if you're playing the races this weekend.